Are you afraid of God?
No. But I'm afraid of you.
Will the circle be unbroken by and by and by?
Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Young here and welcome to the video review for Bioshock Infinite. The original Bioshock shook the video game landscape forever. Its incredible story, unique setting, and top-notch gameplay made it one of the most critically acclaimed games of all time. Out comes its sequel, Bioshock Infinite, and yeah, it has a lot to live up to. Expectations are high, and gamers crave a refreshment from what has been a stale time for first-person shooters. Does Bioshock Infinite sink into the ocean, or does it soar to the skies? The story begins in 1912. Booker DeWitt is a man who has lived a dangerous life, a life not to be proud of. One day, through gambling, Booker finds himself in a lot of trouble by building up debt to some dangerous people. To repay his debt, he has agreed to do them a favor, to travel to the city of Columbia and retrieve a girl known as Elizabeth, who along with Booker is at the core of what ends up being a mind-boggling story. The story unfolds in Booker's first-person perspective. Going from point A to point B may trigger in-game cutscenes, some simple and others with amazing set pieces. A more subtle method of storytelling occurs through occasional conversations Booker and Elizabeth engage in mid-game. While they do have their fair share of serious and captivating conversations, their great chemistry occasionally brings about lighthearted and at times sarcastic chatter that are equally enjoyable to listen to.
Do you know this artificial beach was built in only 6 months?
And how do you know that?
From one of the books I threw at you.
Audio logs also make a return from the original Bioshock in the form of voxophones, which contain conversations and narrations from characters that inhabit the floating city of Columbia, some which players will meet face to face. These audio logs will give players deeper insight into the rich history of the city itself, which could almost be a character of its own. The city isn't just the setting, but also a spotlight for dangerous and controversial themes such as racism, nationalism, sexism, and religion, to name a few. It is home to the godlike idol Father Comstock, along with two factions at war, the Founders and the Vox Populi, along with extremists such as the Fraternal Order of the Raven, essentially Columbia's KKK, and more, each serving to convey these themes in an extreme fashion. Lovers of history will especially find a lot to love, since the city of Columbia heavily borrows from American history. The city could be said to be a culmination of past and present American themes and ideals on steroids. The game is brave, giving it to you like it is, no sugarcoating.
Shit.
Oh, and get ready for an ending full of surprises. Although granted, the ending will be a love or hate relationship. It's the kind of ending that has a conclusion, but at the same time it is open to interpretation, which some may not find satisfying. To me personally, it was perfect, concluding the game as ominously as it started. I do have some complaints, however. Unfortunately, the story slows down dramatically halfway through. The game constantly finds ways to prevent players from reaching their objective for the purpose of prolonging the story. If the story is a car ride, halfway through it keeps slamming on the brakes and taking the long way around to its destination. Fortunately, who and what's in the car make the ride enjoyable nonetheless. Plus, once you near the end of the game, the story picks right back up and never lets go. Another complaint I have is Songbird. I expected Songbird's complicated relationship with Elizabeth to be one of the highlights of the story, but instead, players will get a character that just pops in and out, mostly for the suspense and the scares. Songbird, I feel, could have been so much more, and it's damn disappointing that wasn't the case. Finally, it's slightly disappointing to see the game's lackluster implementation of choice. In Bioshock 1, choices players made actually had an impact to the outcome of the game. In Bioshock Infinite, choices offered are few, far between, minor, and tacked on by comparison. But even with its flaws, the overall story is rich and sumptuous, maybe a little hollow in the middle, and with an ominous aftertaste that may not suit everyone. Now, a story as rich and complex as this can go incredibly wrong without the right finesse and presentation. Fortunately, Bioshock Infinite knocks it out of the park. Graphically, on a technical level, the game does a good job, but what it does artistically just blows the mind. The star of the game is undoubtedly the city of Columbia, one of the most beautiful settings to grace video games. Unlike the underwater world of Rapture, which was dark, rotting, and claustrophobic, the city in the sky, Columbia, is bright, lively, and incredibly open, just brimming with life. My jaw dropped to the floor the second the city came into view. You will feel like a little kid in Disneyland. Everything about the city, from its structures to all the little attractions and objects scattered around the world, is so visually appealing that your curiosity will be piqued everywhere you go. You may find yourself ignoring the main objective and just roaming around to touch, see, and loot everything. It's all the little details that bring this world to life. Now, of course, eventually shit gets real. Things will not always stay bright and shiny. It is equally amazing to see the city change from a beautiful paradise to an all-out battlefield. The game world, the environment, and the atmosphere were obviously crafted with love, passion, and care. Better yet, everything is polished and well optimized. I experienced little to no graphical glitches, and the game ran beautifully overall. Character models also look fantastic. I especially love how they have a slight Pixar movie look to them, particularly Elizabeth, who almost looks like a Disney princess. Enemy designs are particularly a marvel to behold. With versions of enemies from both the Founders and the Vox Populi, enemies stay decently varied visually. It is obvious that the developers had a blast designing these crazy-looking enemies to match the crazy city. Overall, this game is graphically and artistically stunning. Let's not forget about the audio, however. The music leaves a memorable mark, especially with its incredible range, conveying both beauty and dread, calmness and urgency, peace and chaos, joy and sorrow. There's a little bit of everything here, all which perfectly blend together with the atmosphere of the game. The voice actors also give fantastic performances, from the main characters to the random denizens roaming around the city. The sound effects have also been put together with incredible finesse to match the sleek visuals, elevating the presentation to new heights. Even little things like the simple yet attractive main menu show the developers' attention to detail. With all that said, I am sure what gamers truly want to know is how well the game plays. In a word, fantastic. First and foremost, the game encourages exploration thanks to all the essential loot scattered around this vast city. After the scavenger hunt, if players get lost, at the click of a button, a navigation arrow will always be available to guide players back to the main objective. Unfortunately, there were a number of occasions in which the navigation arrow pointed me the wrong way or made me do circles around the city, so sometimes your instinct will have to take over. When not distracted by the city, combat is where players will spend most of the game. Unlike in most first-person shooters, health does not regenerate. However, early in the game, players are given a regenerating shield that protects the player's health as long as the shield remains intact. Now, to deal damage, players can wield 2 primary weapons at a time, ranging from pistols, shotguns, rifles, snipers, machine guns, missile or grenade launchers, etc., each with their own unique Columbia look and twist. Alongside these weapons, players will be using Vigors, which replace plasmids from Bioshock 1. A little sip of one of these will grant the individual with superhuman powers at the press of a button. There are 8 unique Vigors total, each upgradable and also with alternate firing modes executed by holding down the Vigor button rather than just pressing it. These Vigors are powerful, but their use will be limited by salt, the equivalent of mana or magic points. The most fun aspect of Vigors is the ability to combine certain powers to create some cool effects, like setting a flock of ravens on fire, which spreads the fire to surrounding enemies. Vigors can also interact with some of the environment, like fire with oil and electricity with water. Experimentation is definitely encouraged. Separating Bioshock Infinite from its predecessor is a nifty device known as the Skyhook, which will serve as Booker's singular melee weapon and also an important method of transportation. Oh, and the included finishing moves come free of charge. What do I mean by important means of transportation, you ask? The Skyhook magnetically attaches itself to floating railways known as skylines, or as I like to call them, the most dangerous roller coaster in the world. Once skylines are added into the mix, combat becomes exhilarating. Imagine almost flying around the city, moving at incredible speed with the same sensation of a roller coaster, while shooting and demolishing your enemies. There's honestly nothing quite like it. Oh, and cannonballing off the skyline onto enemies just never gets old. What makes the skyline work so well is how smooth it is to jump in and out of it, although there were certain moments in which jumping onto the skyline didn't trigger, causing me to fall off the stage. These moments were few and far apart, but present nonetheless. Another addition to combat is Elizabeth, your non-intrusive and extremely useful partner. During combat, she will act as a scavenger, looking for weapons, bullets, medkits, and salt bottles mid-battle to toss to players when running low, making up for the inability to store medkits and salt bottles to later use at your leisure, since they're consumed instantly as soon as they're picked up. Now, there is always the chance she won't find what you need mid-battle, so you can't always depend on her to patch you up. With chance and luck playing a small role, combat feels more realistic and slightly more nerve-wracking, which makes the overall game experience more intense. Elizabeth also has the ability to open phenomena known as tears to bring in objects from other dimensions with a click of a button, an ability also vital to the story. There are specific tears that bring in specific objects at specific locations, objects from boxes full of medkits or salts, weapons and ammo, cover, to even turrets and automatons, which are invaluable in large-scale battles. If you haven't noticed by now, Elizabeth is vital to your survival, making her feel like a true companion. Players will actually feel the weight during those occasional moments when the game separates the two protagonists. So combine all these elements, the unique weapons, the vigors, the skyhook, the skylines, and Elizabeth, along with varied, fierce, and intelligent enemies, and you have yourself a recipe to an adrenaline-pumping combat system. Outside of combat, you'll be using one of many vending machines scattered across Colombia to upgrade your character by spending the game's equivalent to dollars, silver eagles. There are 3 kinds of vending machines to spend money on. The dollar bill vending machine allows players to restock on health, salt, and ammo. Van Vigor allows players to upgrade specific vigors, from simple upgrades like increase of damage, duration, or area of effect, to more substantial upgrades with special perks and effects that elevate the vigor entirely. Finally, Minuteman's Armory allows players to upgrade their weapons for increased clip size, more firepower, or more accuracy. Money is relatively scarce, so how players spend money really does have a large impact. Upgrades, particularly vigor upgrades, are rather expensive, so be sure to upgrade vigors and weapons that you use often. It's a very well-balanced and well-paced system. As if that wasn't enough, players will find what are called gear randomly scattered around Colombia, which are equipable articles of clothing that will grant players special abilities, perks, and bonuses. All gear will fall under one of 4 categories: hats, shirts, pants, or boots. One of each can be equipped at one time. Players can switch between gear at any time through the game's in-game menu. And let's not forget about infusions, rare potion-like items that grant permanent increases to health, salt, or shield. So, by taking advantage of gear, infusions, weapon upgrades, and vigor upgrades, players can literally design their own character class. Combine this fantastic progression system with a heart-pounding combat, and you can bet your ass that you'll be hooked throughout the whole game. I mean, sure, in terms of gameplay, apart from shooting and killing, there's not much else to it. But the variety of tools and options players are given, and the well-balanced and well-paced progression system make each combat scenario incredibly fun and decently challenging. And if the combat doesn't hook you, and trust me, it won't come to that, the story and the world sure will. Finishing the game after the 10-hour-long campaign will unlock the 1999 difficulty mode. In this mode, enemies are stronger, resources are scarce, players are more vulnerable, the navigation arrow is completely disabled, and reviving after death costs $100. If players don't have the money, then it is game over. A good way to keep hardcore gamers coming back.
There are loved ones in the glory whose dear forms you often miss.
What more can be said? An incredible story with gripping narrative, a rich new world full of history, immaculate presentation, and excellent gameplay mechanics make Bioshock Infinite one of video games' greatest achievements. A standing ovation to Ken Levine and his incredible team. They have done it again. Do yourself a big favor and buy this game.
Told you.
9.5 out of 10. Day 1 must buy. For more game reviews along with game news and cinemas, be sure to join the NASIAN and subscribe to Young Gear. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you very much, and Young out!